or even we are. Yes, we are. So I'll just start and begin. I hope that you as well enjoyed the sessions that were broadcasted or shown so far. And I'm going to talk about the tasks reassignment. So I will be really focusing on the reassignment part. Now, if you'd like to extend the knowledge about the tasks in general, so how you can actually work with Power Automate tasks, then there is also an awesome session from Reza Durrani. I think it's 4 p.m. GMT, and he's going to speak even more about the tasks. So just a few words about myself. My name is Tomasz Poszetek. I'm from Warsaw in Poland. And that is true that the Power Automate is this area of my specialization because I'm working with processes ever since I actually somehow acknowledged SharePoint, which was over 10 years ago already. And I was working in SharePoint Designer with K2, with Nintex, with some other vendors as well with SharePoint. I taught that already. Anyway, and then once the Power Automate was introduced, I wasn't MVP back then, so I was only able to count on this public preview version. I somehow onboarded to the Power Automate, and I'm working with this platform ever since, and I really enjoy how it's being developed and where it's going. And yeah, that's it about myself. So just a few words about tasks in general, like this small introduction. Because I believe that many of you who is now watching this session has also, like myself, kind of a background from SharePoint or in SharePoint. And when we were using tasks in SharePoint, either on premises or in online, this approach for assigning tasks, for having requests and approval items was kind of a different, because all the tasks that were being assigned to approvers for specific items in a specific SharePoint site where those, let's say, requests were present, it was always happening within the same site. So for the requesters, for the approvers, it was very understandable that if they actually want to see their task, they have to navigate to the site which is hosting this solution. Now, for example, with Nintex, as we were working in premises, when the task was assigned to someone, then only that assigned person was able to actually edit that task and approve it. In SharePoint Online, which is actually, well, natural and is following the principles of SharePoint, anyone with contribution permissions on a task list is able to edit even others' tasks and complete them. So even though you're assigning a task to Mr. Doe, then Mrs. Doe can actually edit his task and complete it. And well, that is a little bit frustrating for some of the customers, but this is how it is. This is just following the SharePoint functionalities. And now, since the tasks in Power Automate were introduced, we actually were given, again, this functionality that only assigned person can do anything with these tasks. However, what customers are not somehow understanding is that these tasks are no longer present, not in SharePoint, not in file that is being approved, nowhere that is actually being related to the item that is being approved. And so my customers, for example, ask me, hey, can you embed me the tasks list in a SharePoint site? And now there are two things why not. First is that the tasks list in Power Automate has this iframe no display tag, HTML tag embed, so you can't display this page via the iframe. And then the second thing is obviously that this page displays not only tasks related to a specific SharePoint site, but to every other flow which assigns tasks in the specific environment. So that would be even more confusing than helpful. And so we end up in a situation that we have now Power Automate that assigns tasks, even if it is running in context of the SharePoint items. And these tasks are simply residuing somewhere there in Power Automate portal. Now, there is now a new interface that is called Approvals in Microsoft Teams. It's even more fancy. However, its functionality is a little bit limited, but it has its other benefits. And now, one of the very, very specific functionalities that we have in tasks is called the reassignments. And this is what I'm going to be focused on right now. Tasks in Power Automate are residuing in Dataverse. And this is just a big picture schema of how this table layout in Dataverse for tasks look like. So first, the most important is the table called approval. This is the table that actually holds information about, let's call them headers of the approval. So here you can find a description of the task. Here you can find a title, information, who is the creator, who initiated the process, and when it was created. So then if you have a task assigned to either one person or multiple person, then there is always one entry in approval table, the header. Now the second table is approval request here in the bottom left corner. Now this table, as you can expect, is holding information about every single created task in this task process. One more information. The approval is also holding information about the type of approvals, like first to respond, auto respond. In approval request, there is information about every single assigned task. So if you're assigning a task to 5 employees, then there will be 5 entries in approval request table. The name has changed. And here you will find information when this particular task was created, to whom, so who is the owner, to whom it is assigned, and what is its status, so if it is still active or inactive. Now, the next table is the approval response, which holds information about the outcomes of the completed task. So if assignee completes their task, then the task is being marked as inactive here in approval request, and then a new entry is created in approval response with information about the outcome, about the comments. The flow approval table, I don't really know how in mechanism of the whole solution it is being used. However, it holds information about the flows which contains or which are assigning tasks. So it is like the information for maybe some Power Automate mechanisms, so that it is able to find every flow which is assigning a task. So this is this definition table, and then the user is actually used because every of these tables is not holding information about the assignee, about the owner via the email address, but via the Dataverse user table GUID. And so this is the big picture of how the tasks actually looks like in Dataverse. One small remark: if you have any questions, I prefer you unmute because I'm just on a single laptop. I don't have more monitors, so I cannot see questions if they're appearing. So please unmute yourself. All right. So meanwhile, I'll just continue. So how can we actually assign tasks? Today, we do have, I think, 3 options. At least I'm not aware of any other of those supported. So first is via the Power Automate flows, obviously. So you can create a Power Automate, you can put there an action that assigns a task. Done. Now, the other option is quite new. The other 2 options are quite new, and they're coming from this new functionality that arrived in Microsoft Teams, so that it allows you to create tasks directly within the context in Microsoft Teams, like around the conversation, around the document. Or if you go to Microsoft Teams' new application, it's called Approvals. There you also have a button to create a task in a default environment. Why only in default environment? I don't know, but it's actually limited to currently only to default environment. So there are like 3 supported ways of how you can create a task. And so how can you reassign a task? And so, honestly speaking, there is just one, like literally one supported way to reassign a task today. So no matter how you assign a task in Power Automate, the only way to let user to reassign it is to go to action items in Power Automate portal, and then to click on the task. And then there is this option under other options that user can choose to complete the task that is called reassign, unless the user who initiates the approval process does not turn off this functionality to allow reassignment. If the allow reassignment is on, then this option to reassign will be present. And here you can simply provide the name of the other employee to whom you'd like to reassign the task. And that's the only supported way via the user interface. Right. Right. So now, what happens actually when user reassigns a task? So what is happening underneath? So first, this original item, the original task in approval requests table is being updated. Its status reason is being set to reassign, and the status of the task is set to inactive so that it is disappearing from the list of the user's action items. And then the new entry is created in the approval request table with two information field from the original entry. So the field called reassigned from is being set as a lookup to the original task, so the one that is set inactive. And the second thing that is happening is that the reassigned from index is set to the GUID of this original task. And so this way, the new task actually is being created with this lookup to the previous one. And here the question actually is born. So what happens, or what should we do if this original assignee is not available? Let me have a sip of water. So what shall we do if the employee is on a holiday, or is on a sick leave, or has COVID, or simply left the company? Now, what should we do with all his tasks, and how can we actually continue with these approvals? What we also have to understand around this reassignment of task is that there are some principles that we actually need to follow. I mean, not we need to follow, but principles that are being followed by the mechanism that we can use most of. So first thing is that obviously users cannot reassign tasks that are not being assigned to themselves. So this is one of these principles that I was talking about in the very beginning, that in Power Automate approvals, the tasks are locked to their assignees. So like no one apart from the assignees can do anything with them. No one else can approve them. No one else can cancel them. Wrong. No one else can complete them, and also no one else can reassign them. So that's the first principle. The second one is that users cannot reassign tasks to themselves. Fair. And also users cannot reassign the tasks to the task's creator, so to the user who initiated the workflow. Now this all makes sense, but it's also somehow limiting how we can work with these tasks for someone who is not present and cannot work on their behalf. And so what are the official ways right now? What I can recommend is that we need to think about the design of the workflow in advance. One of the most powerful approaches to handle this unexpected situation that someone is leaving the company or is on a holiday or a sick leave and cannot complete their task is to use the timeouts. I will show you in a moment how to just use a small pattern around timeouts, so that if the approval is reaching the timeout, like 2 days, 3 days, then the first approval is being canceled, and then you can use alternative way to, for example, assign the same task to someone else. So that if the original assignee cannot complete their task, then you can call it escalation, or you can call it a workaround, up to you. But that's the first approach. Now, the second one is to ask the creator of the task to go into action items into Power Automate portal, and then under the assigned tab, they can find a way to cancel the pending tasks. So this way, they can simply cancel the task and then, for example, resubmit the flow. Of course, changing the assignee in the middle. Now, whichever approach we choose, I recommend as well that we are building these workflows in a smart way, so that if we have, for example, multi-stage approvals and the Power Automate task has to be canceled, then the design of the whole workflows logic should be done this way, that even if we resubmit it, then it shouldn't start from the very beginning, so from the very first stage, but should eventually start from the stage where it was canceled. This will limit the number of frustration in your business users because they won't be assigned the same tasks over and over again. And as well, obviously, will make the approvals to complete faster because they will just, be omitting those steps that have been completed already. Also, you can as well, which is not maybe always a solution, but you can choose that you don't want to wait for all responses, so for all assignees to complete their tasks, but only for the first assignee. And as I said, I know that it's not always working, that sometimes you actually require that everyone is, every assignee completes their tasks so that everyone approves. But for most of the scenarios, it is really enough to have just the first response. And then in case other person is on a holiday or is leaving the company, then always someone is there to complete. And last but not least, you can change the user's account password. And if they don't have MFA turned on, you can try to log into their account and simply complete the task for them. I don't recommend that. It's not a very official and well-behaved approach. So no, this one not. Anyway, it's always an option. However, there are also some other ways that we can do it. So for example, I don't know if you're aware, there is a custom connector that Daniel Laskewicz has shared on his GitHub repository that brings to Power Automate actions which are not present in the default tasks set of actions. So with this custom connector, you would be able to assign a task, reassign a task, approve or reject, and cancel. However, it is also following those principles I mentioned. So unfortunately, if you use these actions, you are not able to reassign a task that is being assigned to someone else, because this custom connector is taking the context of the user who authenticated the connection. So if the task is assigned to John Doe, but the flow that is using the reassign action has been authored by Jimmy, and Jimmy's provided his credentials to establish the connection for the custom connector, then the Power Automate will display an error, or the approvals API will display an error that you cannot reassign a tasks that are not assigned to you. And I will show you this later. However, you can always try to play around with this custom connector to make it, even knowing these limitations, to work somehow for you. And also the two other ways that we can do. So first is to work directly on the Dataverse data. So go to approval requests table, edit it, and modify data directly. And lastly, to use Flow or Power Up to update the data in Dataverse. And so the first approach that I mentioned, well, obviously it requires premium license because the custom connector is premium. However, this you can work around by the Azure API management. So you can simply install the custom connector or this Swagger code in API management, and then use the API action in Power Automate, which is standard, not premium. And then you will only need to pay for the service in Azure, which is really, really low. And then the second approach, unfortunately, it also requires premium licenses because to be able to anyhow access Dataverse data, you need to have the licenses. All right. Now, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. So now let me start with those demos. So first, what I wanted to do is to a little bit talk about this first pattern around the reassignment. So what I meant there, let me just create this very first blank flow, is that once you have a Power Automate that assigns a task, let me show it this way. So I'll start and wait for approval. And then I'll simply here create another start and wait approval. And in the second branch, I'll just say like compose something. The point is that this branch should only run, so you have to go into this configure run after configuration, if the original start and wait for the approval is timed out, right? And then the other branch is going to work or be executed for every other case. And now another thing that is really important around the approvals in Power Automate is that they actually, and this limitation of logic apps that is being, well, underneath the Power Automate. So Power Automate is waiting until 30 days for the tasks to be completed. If the task is not completed within those 30 days, then the Power Automate will simply be canceled with an error. But it doesn't mean that the task that has been created is also timed out. No, the fact is that the tasks are actually present in database for years. So even if you do have a task that has been assigned like a year ago, and the Power Automate, which was waiting for the response, has failed months ago, you're still able to go into your action items and find like this task, like you can see here, it has been created. Oh, you can't see it now. So it has been created a year ago, but I'm still able to click approve and complete it. And this task is still going to be completed. So there is still a new entry created in approval response entity, and the whole mechanism behind this task is still working. So if you, for example, create another Power Automate that is not actually waiting for the task to be completed using this built-in mechanism of the approvals action, but is waiting on the new record created inside the approvals response table, then you can have like approvals running for years, and this will be working fine. Now back to this. So don't confuse the timeout that is happening inside the instance of the Power Automate with the, let's say, duration of the life cycle of the data in Dataverse. So now this branch is going to be executed only if the approval is timed out, and by default it is set to 30 days. However, you can as well go into settings of the action, and here you can define other timeout. So you can say, I want this to be timed out after like 3 days. And this way, this action is not going to wait until 30 days, but is going to be canceled or timed out, sorry, just after 3 days. So if you have a very emergency tasks and you don't want to wait forever, then you can have this shorter timeout. And then once this is timed out, you can simply create and assign a different task escalated to someone else. So this is a very easy pattern that you can use to overcome this issue. What would you do if someone is unresponsive and we cannot reassign their task or complete it? All right. So that was the first one. Now the second one, what I want to show you, no, it wasn't this one. I have here somewhere an approval task. No, this is just Swagger. Okay, let's do it this way. So what I also mentioned is this Swagger for custom connector that Daniel Askevich has on his GitHub. So now once you create a custom connector out of it, you are actually getting 5 methods that are being then added as actions to Power Automate. So there is one method called to approve or to cancel, to get all the tasks, and to get all the requests, and finally to reassign. However, as said, even though it is looking really promising, then still this the endpoints that this custom connector is querying or is sending information to are just the regular Power Automate approval API endpoints, and this is still following those principles. So it won't let you to approve task for someone else or to reassign a task from someone else. However, what I want to do now is to show you a small demo of how this can work. So my demo is done this way, that first I am creating an approval. Now this approval has one thing marked here, that it has this enable notifications turned off. Why? Because what I'm doing is I'm writing my own adaptive card actionable message, which I'm sending with all the information to let the user approve or reject this task, or to reassign it. And then reassignment again is not present in this default built-in email that is being sent from the service. Also, what I'm doing is I'm sending this adaptive card as a regular adaptive card to the Teams user, and then eventually the flow is waiting for an approval. And the task is being assigned to someone that I have to define. So let me just start it right now. I'll send it to John Researcher. Something in my eye. And now, once this is submitted and the whole configuration is, the whole scope is executed, the flow will send this approval task via the email and assign as well the card, and now it's waiting for the approval. Now, one thing that I also showed you was that here under the send history, I can find all the tasks that my account has been used to assign to someone else. And so I see here this simple task for John. So that was just assigned moments ago, and I can cancel it if I need it, but I don't at this moment. So now I just switch to John's inbox. And here is this email that John has just received. Yeah, sometimes this actionable message is not loading. So here is this actionable message with details about the task. Well, okay, I wasn't that really engaged to change the requester information to myself, so that's just a fixed information, but it's not the point. The point is that here also the assignee is able to complete the task the same as that would be done in this regular actionable message sent from Power Automate. But as you can see here, I can reject, I can approve, but there is no reassignment option. What is different in my scenario is that I can as well reassign. So right here now I can simply change information. And now what is going to happen underneath is that I'm using this custom connector to send data to approvals endpoints. And so now if I try to reassign this task to Tomasz Poszedek, you'll see that there should now appear an information, that the approval requester may not be assigned, right? If I try to reassign to myself, there's an information that, well, that user is already assigned. So as you can see, this is really following the same principles. So now I'll try to reassign this to Stefan Kowalski, which should work. At least it was working yesterday. Okay, so now my task has been completed. My task is updated. I see that the outcome is reassigned. I see who is the new assignee. All the information is closed. And now this is Stefan Kowalski's inbox. And he also received a task. However, because as said, this whole mechanism is using these endpoints, following those principles, that person is unable to complete the task this way. Why? Well, because there will be displayed information that it has been already reassigned, but the action still thinks, let me just show you. Let me just show you how it works. So this is the flow that is being triggered from this actionable message every time I'm hitting either of these buttons to approve, reject, or reassign. And now what this flow is doing is first receiving via the HTTP request JSON with some information like what is the response, the comments, for example, the new assignee, what is the type, and well, what is the approval ID. Then the second thing it is doing is getting all the information around these tasks. So it's getting the user ID for the given email address, is getting the information from the approval table, so the request header, and also information from approval requests to get the ID of the approval task, this single one assigned, by using this OData filter query. And so then depending on the type, so if it is approve, reject, or reassign, it is just doing a different branch in the switch. And finally, if the reassignment is done, if the new reassignee is not empty, so if this is not, if there is no way, if there is no reason to raise an error, then the flow can actually jump into this, let's say, correct branch and attempt to reassign. But the authentication for this reassignment, for this action, is actually being done using the credentials of the account that was used to create this connection. And so because John account was used, therefore John was able to reassign his task. But because this is still John's account used for this connection, then Stefan is unable to do anything with this task because the endpoint is still thinking that it is John trying to complete his task, although he has already reassigned it. And here we are in this situation where, well, still, even though we have those fancy looking custom connector actions that we could nearly use, we are still unable. So I'm really hoping that in the nearest future, Microsoft is going to release either maybe a new role in Dataverse that is going to be like approval super user who is going to be able to actually reassign other users' tasks and approve them, reject them, so that we could have like a service account that would be used to work for such scenarios, or that maybe this endpoint is going to as well accept some other parameters which would describe who actually the person who is trying to complete the task is, not taking this information from the connection context. So that seems like a dead end, right? But as said, there is still a set of different methods that we can do. So now just navigate back to my original account and jump to the data, to the tables. I'll just copy, I'll just copy these task that I was trying now to complete ID. Okay, I'll just go to switch. Here is this failed action. And here I wasn't able to approve because there is no further approval needed from myself. So what I need to do is to get this approval ID. And now in tables, what I can do is to go into approval requests. Sorry, here. And here you can find this option that is called the edit data in Excel. So now once you hit it, you should be able, hopefully it will work for me, to authenticate with your tenant's account. That should be, of course, the environment owner or admin. And now let me see if this is going to authenticate or if I need to resign. Okay, I'll just sign in. That was a dot, right? And now I as well need to Authenticate here. Oops, I pressed the wrong outcome. Sorry. Okay. So this is not the best and maybe the most supported way, but that is always some kind of a workaround if you're really stuck with the approval and you can't do anything else. So now here I have all the information from the approval request data table, sorry, and I can actually work with it. And, well, be careful because you can really destroy something. Sorry. Well, there should be this record somewhere here. Oh, sorry. All right. So here is this task that was assigned to John Researcher in the first place. And now, as you can see, it is now marked as, sorry. I'll try my best. So now it's set as inactive and reassign. So what I have to do is actually to find another one, and it's here. So you can find, you can see that is reassigned from, so that's possibly the one that is assigned to Stefan Kowalski. And now, if you want now this task to be, again, available for General Researcher, well, what you have to do is to change here the assignee to General Researcher. That's not the very best way, but it's feasible. So right now, you can say publish, and once I navigate back to John Researcher's approval items, I will be able to see this task assigned to John again. Or maybe it hasn't published yet. Has it been published? No, it wasn't changed. So that's the question why. Maybe I need to select just from the list. So I'll just do it this way. Okay, now this has been completed and changed. So Journal Researcher is now the new assignee. And here in Journal Researcher's list of tasks, you can find this simple task for John again. So this is one of the approaches that you can actually follow if, like I said, the original assignee is really gone for months and no, not for months, for days, and you cannot contact them, but you have an urgent task and you need to complete it, and you don't want to cancel the workflow because it has done so many things before the approval, and well, you just cannot be resubmitted and blah, 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 blah. So you can, in this emergency approach, navigate to Dataverse, edit the task, and change the assignee. And so right here, John is actually now able again to approve it and complete this task. So everything works fine. Now, the other way that we can do is more elegant, is to follow the steps that actually Power Platform is doing when we are reassigning a task. So first to actually create new entry, and then, or maybe to update the original entry that is now inactive and reassign, and then to create new entry that is looking up the original one. So I have created this small application. I know it's not very fancy, and as you can see, based on the icons and names, it is quite old, to be honest, but it's still working, and it's really working fine. I think it has like over a year or something. And so its functionality is just to let me to display all the tasks that are present in the Dataverse with the option to simply reassign them or to cancel them if I need it. So for example, there is a task that is assigned to editor. Now I can see to whom this is assigned. And I can say again that I want to reassign this task to Stefan. And so now once Stefan, assigning change successfully. And so now once Stefan navigates to his tasks, let me just open this tab, this URL. So as this is loading, I will just try to open this application in a design view. Now where it is, Canvas up here. So this is loading, and here are the tasks. No, gosh, no, that's John. Sorry. Okay, and this is Stefan. So Stefan should now see, or why it's not here. Since it was reassigned to Stefan. That's a good question. Why it's not present in his list? Obviously, I don't really know why it's not there. It should be there. So maybe I'll try a different thing. So I'll now reassign this test edit to John Researcher. Maybe this way it will work for some reason. And now this should appear here in the list of John's tasks. You have to trust me, it was working. Yes, okay, so there it is. So this reassignment worked. I don't know why it didn't work for Stefan. That is something I don't have an answer for right now, to be honest. But at least this scenario worked, so that I reassigned to John Researcher. Maybe Stefan's account, because I yesterday changed his alias and primary login username, whatever, like everything information. Therefore, it is not yet like properly recognized in Dataverse. I'm just guessing, don't know. Nevertheless, this reassignment that way works. And now what it's doing actually, the application here. Hello, what is that music? So what it's doing is doing a lot of things. Some of them are actually not really necessary. So first, it is getting information. First is patching the new record into the approval request table. So it's creating this new record with information. Where is this reassigned? Yeah, this information about the reassigned task from. So it's ID and the lookup. So these are the two information taken from the original task that the new entry is holding, so that Power Automate knows that this is actually a reassigned task. Now, all these other information are not really that much required. I think that once we create this information with the lookup, they're somehow being populated automatically. Well, the only information that's really that's always very, very much important are those two. So the owning user ID and the owner, right? Because, well, we need to create this entry for someone. So it's the first step. And then the second step, if the first one was completed successfully, is updating the existing record in approvals request table. So setting its status to inactive and status reason to reassign. So this is actually following these steps that are done as we reassign a task from the UI. This disease is awful. All right. And that's it. So you can do these steps, you can do those actions here in Power Apps, or I could as well try, or you can try on your own. Sorry. To, for example, go here, and instead of reassigning approval, first to create a new row in approval request, where it is. I'll just type. Right, so we can create a new entry, completing this with the information that I have taken from this request task for user. So obviously this is going to be put now in a loop because the information there is always a table, even if it contains just a single record. Right, so like you need to fill in all this information, remembering that the status reason should be now reassigned, and status here at the bottom should be set to inactive, right? So that's the first step. And then the second one, wrong, sorry. This is creation of the new record. So that status is active, my bad. And the status reason is as well active. And then you should as well update the existing record right in approval requests. And then to use approval request this unique identifier. And here what we only need to update is that the status reason is reassigned and that the status is inactive, right? So instead of using this custom connectors action, we could do the same functionality or cover the same functionality using these two actions directly on the Dataverse. So to first create the record and update the existing one, and then actually to do everything else that I've been doing here. So to send this new email and things. And this would be the only difference that would actually work. But its downside is that if someone actually forwards that email to someone else elsewhere, then they could as well complete the task on their behalf. So there would be like no real control there would be no like real control on who is actually approving the task. So that is something that you would also need to take care of by more carefully looking at the information being sent from this actionable message to Power Automate and filter maybe these requests that are not really originating from these users who should actually be the original assignees. Yeah, I'll just switch to the last slide of the presentation, which was that one. I'm always pressing the wrong button to resume presentation where I was. So if you have any questions, or maybe not, first, thank you very much. I am really proud of myself. I survived till the end with just very short breaks. And thank you very much. I really hope that this session gave you or brought you the information you were expecting to learn. If you have any questions, and if you can scan this QR code, then you will be redirected to aka.ms/poshetek, where you'll find all the hyperlinks to my social media channels. And I encourage you to follow me on YouTube and Twitter and ask questions, whichever channel you can. So we have 10 minutes left.
Thank you, Thomas. So we will keep it brief. We won't keep you on too long. We'll limit it to the last 3 questions, okay?
No, come on. This is very fine.
Yep.
I mean,
so one of the last questions was by Smita, was if we send an approval request, but the receiver of the request, i.e. the approver of the request, is out of office, just checking, is there any way to handle it via the flow?
So you can actually, via the Graph API, get users' inbox details. And if that person has the out of office responder set, then you can get this information via Graph API. So you can like examine if that person is in company or not, and then assign this task to someone else. However, if that task is assigned already and that person is now out of the office, then you are in this situation that the assignee is absent and you're not able to do anything until that person is back, unless you want to work directly with Dataverse, as I showed.
So the next question is by Vamsi, which is, could you please help how we can handle the approval request within apply for each loop?
I'm wondering what is the actual need for putting approval requests within the apply for each loop. Vamsi, would you be so kind to unmute yourself and ask this question?
Okay, let's make you a presenter and let's see if you can do that. So if you could put your hand up, Vamsi, if you're ready to ask a question, that'd be great. So yes, so I think they were the last set of questions really. Vamsi, did you want to raise your hand so you could ask the question as to why you need to do that loop? Just bear with me. We're just waiting for you to raise your hand, Vamsi, and then we'll be able to unmute you. Let's see if Vamsi's still available.
Yes. His hand is raised.
His hand is up now. Awesome. Okay.
All right. So maybe in between that you make Vamsi presenter to unmute himself. So I believe that possibly the reason for this this loop with approvals is that you have like multi-staged approval, and that you want simply to make a sequential kind of approval, and that you don't know how many stages you want to cover, that there might be like a dynamic number of stages, one after another, where this approval is going to, right? And so if this is the case, then how can we handle that for request? Then I don't actually know what to advise you, since I don't know the scenario.
Hi, thanks. So
Okay.
I have a SQL connector which is having nearly 100 records. So what happens in every 3 months, we need to make sure the data is up to date in our SQL database. So what we are doing, we are sending a sequential approvals for all these 100 approvers. So it's just only one approval is required. So instead of creating all 100 flows, so we just created only one flow and read all the 100 records within the SQL and send the approval email.
Okay, so you know what? I would recommend you to look at the child flows concept and simply create a child flow which is assigning an approval and then waiting for this approval, and this parent flow that has a loop. And so the parent flow could trigger the child flow passing details about this current record from SQL. And then the child flow would simply assign the record and then wait for it to be completed. So this way you would have these 100 tasks assigned ad hoc at once, not one after another, which, well, can take really long weeks to complete.
Yeah, so all the 100 records are different approvers. So we have 100 approvers for every record. So in a sequential way, in a parallel way, it should trigger an 100 email for one flow. So somebody may reply immediately, or somebody may approve maybe after 1 week, or somebody may approve or deny. So we wanted to tackle this situation. We want to handle that.
So you want to handle to have this all sequential, or to work actually in parallel?
Parallel.
So that's what I mentioned. So I would recommend you to think about the child flows so that the loop is triggering one child flow per each record, and then this child flow is actually handling this particular one approval, and then you can have like 100 parallel approvals, each for a different record from the SQL table. And then you don't actually need to bother that one approval takes a week, the other takes an hour, and another one takes like 2 weeks. Okay, so the child flows, what you have to know is that you need to create them in a solution. So the parent flow and the child flow have to be in a solution. This is the only way that they can work. I mean, this is the only way you will see the child flow. All right, so.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. Well, Thomas. Well, again, thank you so much for surviving that. We saw you struggling, so thank you once again. You know, for that great presentation, very practical session. So we have a lunch break now. So we have 1 hour break before we meet with Paul. And you can see Paul. Hi, Paul. Do you want to give everyone a wave? Hi, Paul. So Paul will be up after the lunch break. Okay. So Paul's got a great session for you. Paul, do you want to share your session details with everyone?
Yeah, I'm doing can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, I'm doing a session on parsing emails, inbound emails. It's a subject that comes up a lot on the forums because it can be quite, I mean, you don't have any control over your inbound email. And so those questions can be quite tricky depending on the nature of the email coming in, and it needs a lot of knowledge around parsing arrays and strings and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how we can get data from an email.
Fantastic. So everybody grab yourself some lunch, a coffee, and relax your brain and get prepared for Paul's session, who's up next in exactly 1 hour's time. And again, a big thank you to Thomas for your session today and for making it through COVID. We hope you a fast recovery.
Thank you very much, and I wish you a pleasant rest of the conference. And see you in person somewhere, maybe next year.
We do, yes. We need to have this Global Automation Conference as a in-person event someplace next year. And one of the things we want to ask everyone who's been attending over the next few days, we want to ask which is the best location. And let's make it happen, guys. Let's make an in-person event happen next year. Where's that? Sorry, Maldives, did you say?
Maldives, yes.
Oh, sounds nice. So let's do that as well. Let's get some a nice location for next year. That'll be great. So see you all in 1 hour exactly, guys. Thank you.
Bye.